Hi, I'm James, and in this video I go from this to this. I remove the caliper, the brake disc and the wheel bearings, and then I put them all back together again. What I say next is really important. I am not a professional mechanic. This is just my experience of doing this. We're talking about critical brake systems here, so if you get it wrong, it can go disastrously wrong. So keep that in mind when you're watching this video. It's not a technical how-to, it's just my experience. Today's video is all about replacing the front brake discs, bearings and rebuilding calipers. So apologies for the noise outside. After all the good weather we've had recently, it's now tipping it down. What a lovely day. So I'm stuck inside the van explaining this to you. So what I've got is, on my van is a later model. This picture we're looking at here is the earlier caliper you'll see across there. The later vans came with two different types of caliper. One's ATE and then one's a Girling. Mine's ATE, and I'll show you how to work out which one's yours when we go through the video. But essentially what we're going to be doing is taking the wheel off, and then we're going to pop the dust cap off the end. We're going to undo the 27mm bolt. We're also going to undo the brake caliper and take the bolts off, unattach it. I'm going to take the carrier off as well, so that allows us to take it all away. Allow me to remove this brake disc, and then we're going to knock out the bearings and fit brand new ones into a brand new disc. So I'll show you all of that as we go through. So what I've got is the wheel bearing sets from FAG. When we look in here, these are the original equipment manufacturer ones. So these are apparently the best ones you can get at the moment. And when we look at the different bearings that you get in here, you've got the outer bearing, so that's the smaller one, that's made in Hungary. Let's just open that up so you can have a look. So there you go, that's that one. Oh, it's actually hailing now. I don't know if you can see that. What a beautiful day. Tipping it down. So that's the inner, outer bearing, and then we've got the inner bearing as well. So the outer one is made in Hungary, the inner one, and we look at that one, so that's made in Spain. There you go. So we've got a nice European reach with this set, and they come with the races, so they need to be tapped in on either side, and then the actual bearings for both. And I'll talk you through how that fits on the spindle and everything as we go through the video. The kit also comes with the seal that goes just there. So when we look at, I'll just show you this, that fits into the actual brake disc, but we'll talk through that as well. And it also comes with the 27mm peen nut as well, so we actually squeeze this in once it's fitted. This FAG set actually comes with the grease as well, so the bearing grease. I've also got some high performance bearing grease as well, so if that's not enough, which it should be for those two, I've also got some more. So that's the bearing set that we're going to be fitting, so it's going to be really interesting fitting those ones. I've also got these caliper rebuild kits. These are from brakeparts.co.uk, and these are the Budweg ones, so they come with all the relevant seals for the ATE caliper, that one. I've also got new splash plates, so these sit behind where the brake disc is, and mine are all rusted and there's some holes in them already, and the bolts that are in there are already rusted, so they're going to be fun trying to get those out. So I've got stainless steel ones to replace them and then fit these new ones in. So these are actually stainless steel ones, so they look slightly different to the ones on the van, but they should last a long time, so hopefully they'll be all right. Then yeah, we've got the actual brake discs themselves, so I've got two of these for each side, and these are brand new and shiny, so they're not going to stay shiny that long. They'll soon get rusty, I'm sure, but it's nice to see them all brand new and beautiful. Nice chunks of metal, they're very heavy. I've also got this is a brass drift, so when we look at the Bentley manual, it says here, look, where is it? Can't even see it. Remove with a copper drift. Obviously I don't have a copper one, this is brass, so it's just soft, and the idea is that when we're tapping out, you'll see these indentations here. When we're tapping out the inner races and the bearings, it's not, so it doesn't scratch any of this because it's a lot softer. And that's hardened steel, obviously, and this is just a copper, so this is brass drift. If that doesn't work and it's too soft, I've got these, which are some pin punches. So these are actual steel ones, so they'll be nice and hard to hit stuff out with. And then lastly, we've got some copper grease to sit on the back of the new pads that I'm going to put in, which I've not got here, but definitely fit in new pads. And then to clean it up, you'll see that this is actually covered in stuff already to stop it rusting. I have to clean everything up when we refit it. And then I've got some high temperature spray paint for the calipers as well, so to make them look brand new and shiny. So there we go, that's all my stuff. Let's get stuck in. So what we're going to have to do is remove the caliper. So I'm going to lift that off and hang that out of the way. I'm going to take the dust cap off. We're going to unbolt the 27mm nut that keeps the one thing that keeps your brake discs on. When we look at the caliper, there's different types. Now, because mine's an older, later model, it's only got one caliper, so one piston on one side. The earlier ones have a piston on both sides, but the later models have two types of caliper. This one's an ATE, and you'll see that there's a little icon there, so that's the ATE logo. So that's how you know which one this one is. So that's ATE. The other one's called Girling. So there's two types of caliper, depending on what you have, they're slightly different. So to remove this, first I'm going to take the actual caliper off, and then we'll take the carrier. It's got separate bolts as well. So this one's got two hex bolts. So one here and here. They're 7mm each. So we just need to pop these dust caps off, and then we'll take those out. Okay, so there's a dust cap on either one of these. To pull those off, and then you'll see. Get around there. Yeah. There we go. So it's 7mm hex on each one. So there's one. This is the lower one as well. So I'm just going to pop those off. There you go. So they're now free. So I'm just going to undo those. There we go, and that's the bottom one. Oh, okay, so that's the caliper off. Move this slightly. Now you don't want to let that drop, because obviously your flexible brake line will get damaged. So get a bungee cord, hook that through. Then I've just hooked it on the door handle. Nice and easy. So that just keeps it out the way. No tension on the flexible line there. So on this side, it looks like the thread has gone either in the carrier or on the bolt, because this does not screw in at all. And this weld that's been put in place is just to hold that in, I think. I've tried to get rid of it with a chisel, but it's really proving difficult. So what I'm going to do is grind that off, that weld, and I should be able to pull that pin out and then take the whole caliper off then. So it looks like the thread is okay on here, so it must be the carrier. We'll have to look at that when we take it off. So the reason it was welded is that there was no thread inside the carrier here, so the bolt was just moving in and out. So that's why they had to do that. There's hardly any on this one as well at the top, so I'm going to have to replace the whole carrier, get a new one of them. So the brake pads will just lift out now. There we go. There's one. That's the front one. I'm going to replace these as well because they're really fouled by the rusty brake disc. So you're going to see nice shiny versions of everything on here when we're all done, which should be nice. So next is the bolts on the back of here. So this is the caliper, the holder that keeps it attached to the steering knuckle. And there's 2 bolts on the back. Right. I'll give these a scrub and then penetrating oil on these. So you see, it's this one here goes into that, and then one there. So it's those 2 that we need to remove. So that's the carrier free. Now those 2 bolts are out. So next I need to take off the grease cap, because inside there is the peen nut that's holding the brake disc on. So once I get rid of that, I've got to take all this off. So what I've got is a spanner. So what I've got to do is try and prise it that way. So I'm going to whack it a few times. I do have goggles on, so I'm being as safe as I can be. Some people use 2 claw hammers and whack them together. That sounds even more dangerous. I'm just going to try this method and hopefully it'll work. Let's give it a go. I'm just going to squirt a bit of penetrating fluid in there. So I'm just tapping the top of the spanner with a hammer. It worked. Okay, that wasn't too disastrous. There's a slight bit of play in that, but because of the type of bearings, I think that's normal. But I'm going to be replacing the bearings anyway. So on the passenger side, there's this sealant, and you won't be able to pull off the dust cap because the speedo cable is attached to it. So I just need to pick this stuff away first. It's lovely sealant. And what there is a tiny circlip in there, and that's holding the speedo cable into this side of the inside of the dust cap. So we just need to pop that off. Now apparently it's something that everybody loses. So I'm going to try to be the person that doesn't lose it. Put it somewhere safe. He says and he drops it. Okay, so that's the circlip. So that sits on this side of the dust cap. Yep. So that's the inside of the dust cap. Sometimes, if the circlip's not been used, this rattles around everywhere and damages the inside of the dust cap. Or if people have battered it off, tried to batter it off before with a hammer, it's sometimes dented. But this one actually looks in really good nick. And you'll see that the hole there is square. Now again, that can sometimes round out because it's the pressure of the speedo cable. So check yours, make sure that that's nice and square still, so it actually turns this. So you know how fast you're going, or how slow. So just to give you a close-up of the speedo cable, there you go. So it's like a square, and then it's got the indentation for the circlip to go around as well. So there we go. So it's packed full of grease, and you'll see what we've got here is the peen nut. So this nut is the only thing keeping your wheel on. So without that, this whole thing, well, it'll catch on the caliper, but the whole thing will wobble and fall off. So it's a very important nut, that one. It's recommended you change that every time that you take it off. And essentially what it does, it screws in, it's 27mm bolt, 27mm nut. And you see how it's just been tapered in there. It's called a peen nut because it just peens, just squeezes into the 2 points within the steering knuckle on the spline, which just hold it in place. So I'm going to unpeen it, because some people just undo it and let it unpeen itself, but I'm really worried about damaging the thread there. So what I'm planning to do is just unpeen it, and then I'll be able to take that off and then take this whole brake disc away. So this is a 27mm nut on here. You'll see that the washer behind is actually moving quite freely. It should be a lot tighter than that. So I imagine things have worn out over time, but when we refit it, I'll show you how to correctly set that. Now you see that this is actually moving already. So although the peen was on there, that's all that was holding that in place. There we go. Yeah, there's the washer. Now the washer has a little peg on it there that slots in to the spine there. So this is the front, the smaller bearing. That'll come out. And then the whole thing will slot off. There we go. So there you go, you can see the inner bearing there and the races. Last thing to remove is the splash guard for the disc brake. So that's this thing. It's usually, this one is obviously knackered. It's got some holes in it. There's 3 bolts on this one, so one there, and one there. So I'm just going to clean those up again, give them a brush, and then hopefully they'll come out easily. We shall see. So that's the backing plate now free of the steering knuckle. You can see there's a big hole in it already. That's going to go straight in the bin. So here's the offside brake disc that we took off the van. And this is a brand new one in comparison, so you can see how shiny it is and how very much it was time to replace this. You can see how rusted and pitted it was, the poor thing. So I've already done the near side, and I found that it's quite straightforward technique to get these bearings out. And the reason I'm doing it is that just for my own sake, to see what the whole process is like, because I might have to do it for these. But the bearings that are inside that one, I could potentially reuse if they were in good nick. Now I've obviously got the new fag bearing set, so I'm going to be fitting those, but if they were alright and it was just to replace the brake disc, I might want to reuse them. So that's what this whole process is about. It's also useful to have the races so I can tap in the new bearings into this new brake disc as well. So these are the ones that I've got. These are the ones from the near side brake disc that I took off, and you'll see it's in 2 parts. So we've got the outer bearing, so that's in there, we'll see that in a minute, and then that's the race, so that's the thing that sits inside the brake disc. So we need to tap that into position there, obviously with a new one. We're going to take this one out, and then the bearing sits in it. And now on the other side there's another one, so I'm just going to lift this over. That is heavy. This is the inner bearing, so the larger one, and again it has a race that it sits in, so the race has to be tapped in like that, and then the bearing sits within that as well, and then there's a seal that goes on the outside to stop anything getting in. So what we've got in here, you can probably see, is that there's an indentation on either side. Now they're in, I've got them here in the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock position, and they're on the other side as well for the outer bearing. Now what I'm going to do is tap them out using a drift. I tried to use my brass one. This is a 5mm drift, and it just kept deforming, and it was too soft to do anything. So although it wasn't making any scratches or doing any damage to the brake disc itself on the inside, it just wasn't working. So what I did is use the pin punch I've got. So this is the 8mm one, and you might be able to see at the end that it actually deformed the end of this. So this is soft enough to not affect the inside of the brake disc or the actual races or the bearings themselves. So this actually worked quite well. So that's what I'm going to use for this. And the idea is you're going to go all the way through and catch the other side. So we're going to do each side of the bearings and tap them out like that. So 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and tap them out, and then I'm going to turn it over and then do the other side. And it works quite well, so it's quite straightforward. What we've got is obviously the peen nut that we took off, so that's that one. And then we had the washer, and that has the, I can't see it, that has the little notch there, so which fits into the spline to stop that moving around. And then we've got the outer bearings, so that's that one, full of grease. And then here is the race. Now we can't really see it because it's just so filthy. Now on the other side of this we've got, there we go, so we've got the seal, and then we've got the bearing. So that's the bearing there, so it won't come out because the seal's in the way. So in between these two things, you can see through here, is loads and loads and loads of grease. Now when we're looking at this one, there's no grease in it, so it's quite easy to find out where these notches are. When you're trying to do it with this, it's probably best to clean out all that grease first. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean that grease out, and we're going to tap out the two different races and the bearings. So I've got the blocks of wood in place because when we're tapping the bearing out, obviously it needs a bit of room for it to fall out, and it's just a bit more solid for me to tap against. So I've positioned the two indentations, one at 12 o'clock and one at 6 o'clock, just to make it a bit easier for me to find where it is. There we go. So that's the first one, so that's the outer race. So what I'm trying to do at this stage is prise out that sealing ring and try and get it out. On both sides it just wouldn't move, so I don't know if they were just over time they've just completely just stuck in. I just couldn't get them out, so I had to be a bit more aggressive when trying to get them out. You should be able to just prise them out, but it wasn't working for me. With the seal off, we can then remove the larger bearing. That will just pull out, so we can just pick that up. There we go. So that's that one. There we go. So that's the inner race, and then we've got the outer race. So there's the inside of the brake disc. So you can see where I've tapped, where the indentations where I've tapped out. That's where the race would sit. Both of the original sets were FAG as well. They were made in Germany though. They spin, one side spins really nicely. So you can see them spinning nice and quick. The other side, very dull. You can actually feel it catching, and you can probably hear it on this one. Yeah. So again, one side definitely needed replacing. When I look at this side where it was spinning freely, when I was inspecting the individual bearings themselves, there was one that was, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, that one. There was actually a groove in there. You can see that. Yeah. So that started to crack, so that bearing would have failed eventually. So I'm glad I'm replacing these. I just wanted to show you how they fit on the spindle. Now, I've not cleaned up this spindle yet, but you can see the markings of where the race sat and the bearings. So the bearings sat, and then the race was on the other side. So this is in direct contact to the all the bearings that are in on the inner and outer. And I wanted to show you, because I never knew this, and looking at diagrams never kind of worked it out, but you'll see that we tapped out this race that way, and that fits on like that. So that means that this one, the inner bearing, fits in that way round. Okay, so that spins against the spindle there, and then the race is on this side. And then, so I can put the race on so you can see it. So that spins around like that, you see. And then the other one is the outer bearing. Now this goes a different way. So that goes on like that. So that's how they work. So your brake disc is spinning on these two sets of bearings. So that's a nice visual representation. So I've not seen that before, so it was really interesting for me to work that out. And again, the race on that one it goes that way around and sits upwards. So you've got that one that way, and then the other one goes the other way around. So there you go, really interesting. Just to show you the oil seal, sorry, the seal that goes on the end. When I tapped it out on both sides, they just completely destroyed themselves. And what there is a little spring that sits inside it. So there's actually metal inside these, and then the rest is rubber. And then you've got a spring that's actually keeping it all in. So that all just fell to bits. So I just wanted to show you that as well. So I've given this a good clean with brake cleaner to remove the oil that's all over it, so it's all fresh now. And I'm going to tap in the races. So they've got, this side has got the writing on, the flat side, so that needs to go down. It's going to go in there. And what I'm going to use is the old race from the old bearing that we tapped out from the old disc brake. I'm going to use that so I can tap it in straight. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to keep tapping until it goes in. So as it's got the lip there, we don't want to tap this one too far in because then it will get stuck itself. So I'm just going to use the punch to actually get that last bit done. You see that edge down there? Just show you. See that edge? So just a little bit more to go. There we go, that's seated all the way around now. Yeah, that's the same for this side, so I'm just going to tap this in. It's a bit deeper, this one, and goes down quite a lot further. So again, you see the gap between where it needs to be right at the bottom there and here. So now I'm going to tap in the edge all the way around. This punch is made of softer material, so this will deform, but it won't affect the race itself. So there we go, that's fully seated all the way around. It's packed the bearings with grease, and they'll drop in, and then I'll fit the oil seal as well. I've got this grease to pack the bearings. The bearing kit does come with some grease, but I thought I'd get a big tub of it because I want to fill the cavity in between as well, and I don't know if that's enough. So what I'm going to do is use the technique of using your hand and scraping the grease into it to push it up through the bearings, and it should come out the top. So that means it will be packed all the way around. I think there's lots of videos online about packing bearings, and I recommend you check them out because there's lots of different methods of doing it. I'll do it this way because apparently it's a good way of not overpacking the bearing, because if you have too much grease, then it just hydroplanes around and then gets really hot and then just ruins your bearings. They'll wear out quicker. So I'm using this technique, so let's give it a go. You can see it coming up through the bearings there, through the top, which is what we want. There we go, that was good to me. Let me know your thoughts. The oil seal has a spring in that goes all the way around, and that keeps the pressure on. The springs can pop out, so I've seen videos that they recommend packing this with some grease to stop that happening, so I'm going to do that before fitting it. There we go, fit that in. I didn't realise this was a thing until I looked at the manual, but there was a modification to add a sealing ring to help seal the oil seal and stop any contamination getting in to the wheel bearing. You'll see on here, so this is, I've got a later van, which means that it's actually, this part's built into the actual steering knuckle itself, but the earlier ones, there's actually a wider ring that sits in there, so it's just this thin bit here. See, it goes all the way around. Now mine has got pitting, you can see all the way along. Now the seal probably sits a bit further back from there, so it won't really affect it, but I'm going to replace it anyway, just to stop any type of contamination of any water or anything like that getting in to the seal and affecting the wheel bearing. So you can buy the seals like this. I'm going to use a Dremel on this, cut it, and then I should be able to use a chisel to get it off. And I'll be able to put the new one on and then tap that in place to give us a nice clean seal for the oil seal before I fit everything back on. Seemed like underneath that edge there was some rust and corrosion under there, so I'm going to clean that up and I can fit the new rings. So where the ring sits, at the end it just dips in there, so it's been machined to go in, and then this is where the ring sits on this part. There's a slight taper on one side so that faces upwards, so I'm going to put it in position and I'm going to tap it in using, I've got a brass drift, so I'm just going to tap it in using that just so I don't damage it at all. There we go, the new oil seal is in place. So the seal is flush on that side, and when I push it on I'm just going to be careful not to pop this out and knock it on the floor. The thrust washer goes in this way round. That helps stop the nut spinning out. You can use a new peen nut, or what I'm going to do is use one of these Mercedes ones. So this is a clamping one. The benefit of this is that you can adjust it once it's on. It's got the same pitch and thread on these, which means they're perfect for our vans. So I'm just going to tighten that up slightly. Now these are a bit bigger, this is about 31mm, so I'm just going to tighten it and keep spinning. The tightness I'm looking for is to be able to move the thrust washer with a screwdriver and it still spin freely. So I can't move it at the moment. Just knock it back a bit. Is it just moving? Now I can tighten up this to 11 Newton meters, which is not much at all. So if I ever need to adjust that, I can just loosen this off and then twist it. So this is the perfect size because it allows our dust cap to still fit over it. Perfect. full. I've got this black silicone to seal up the speedo cable. So while I've got this off, I've decided that I'm going to try and clean this caliper up and replace the seals, because these are quite papery. I think they need replacing. So what I need to do is get the caliper further out, so it'll be easy for me to remove. So I'm just going to pump the brakes to push the caliper out. On the other side of the van, I've put some wood blocks in, just so that one doesn't pop out while I'm on this side, and then I can do that one afterwards. So when I've got the caliper so far out, I'll then be able to undo the brake lines and then plug that up, so then that's out of the way, and then I can do the other side as well. So the caliper's now free, so I've got to remove that. I'm just going to keep the boot on now, because it's obviously really filthy. So what I've got is a brass bolt, so that goes in to the end of the brake line. That's to stop it, that's just to bung it up, so then I can push out the other side as well. So there we go, that's nice and tight now, so I shouldn't get any drips on that. So there's the caliper, it's now free of the van. I'll be able to clean that up and replace the seals. You can see there's only a small amount of brake fluid actually came out of that when I was doing it, so it's not too messy, thankfully. So here you can see the sludge that was on the back of the cylinder. Obviously not good for brake performance, and even when you're bleeding your brakes, you're never going to get this kind of stuff out of there, so it's good that I've done this. And just to show you inside the actual caliper, look at that, loads of sludge in there. So some weird, is like real tough gunk. Put my finger in, that's what I'm getting. Yeah. Here are the two calipers, so they're looking in really good nick actually, despite how filthy they are on the outside. Now, when the most important thing about the calipers is the piston, and then the actual inner seal there. We're going to replace the inner seal, but it's where that is mounted. If there's any rust around that, we need to check if there's any pitting or anything that's affecting that element. And then the actual pistons themselves. So this edge, and you see when you look around it, it looks in really good nick, this one. So really happy with that. The outside part where it's filthy and slightly rusty, that's not a problem. You'll see that on most calipers, and we can kind of clean that up as well. But that's fine. It's not causing any issues, those, and that will clean up. The importance of this edge is that this slips in and out against that inner seal there, so that square one. It goes all the way around, and that's what stops any of the brake fluid coming out, and it also that seal pulls the piston back in again, so it's really important. So those are the most important elements of the caliper, and the ones to check first to make sure if it's worth rebuilding or not, and these both will be, I think. So when we looked inside the calipers, hard to see with this light, but there is gunk in there, so we need to clean all that out. And I'm going to clean the inner parts with a brass wire wheel, so it doesn't damage any of the steel that's in there. And then I'm going to bung it up and then clean up the whole of the outside as well. So I might actually do the inner bits second, so bung it up, clean up the outside, and then clean the inside on the last element, just so make sure everything's all clean and fresh. Now, you saw in the last part that we did notice there was gunk in there, and you can still see there's some in this one. So that's the build up over time of the brake fluid reacting with the oxygen, and because the brake fluid hasn't been replaced or flushed properly over a long period of time, I'm not sure how long, that happens, and you'll start to see that build up behind your piston. So it's really important to do this regularly, and I'm glad I'm doing this now. So that seal is the dust one, so it just stops anything getting in behind the piston and then going in towards where the main seal is. And then that square seal just sits there. We'll need to pull that out, but that's the most important one, and we need to make sure that the bit behind that is in good condition and it's got a full seal all the way around, so no brake fluid can come in or out. So yeah, we're going to clean these up. So I've cleaned up the calipers as much as I can, and then I've blanked up the different holes. So I've blanked up the bore there, and then the other parts where the sliding pins are going to be. So yeah, I'm now going to spray paint them using some high temperature spray paint, and then pop them in the oven for a bit to bake off, and then they should be nice and shiny. So the most important part is where the seals fit, which is this inner groove here. So as long as that's okay, should be all right. We did see some pitting on the rest of it inside, but because it's so thick, it's not going to cause a problem. What I've got is a brand new piston. So you see here, brand new shiny one. Because I was trying to clean this one up, but I noticed that there is like pitting around the edge. Even though the actual bore part of it is fine, there's no issues with that. So I could have, in theory, have reused it by cleaning this up. But because it was starting to go on the end, I thought I might as well just get a brand new one and fit that. So I'm going to use that one. The service kit I've got comes with two types of lube. One is a silicone grease, so I think that's for like the outer parts that we fit in. And then there's the hydraulic assembly paste. That's to go on the actual seals themselves, because it doesn't react with brake fluid. Because if you use the other stuff inside, it probably will do, and it'll go wrong. Now, the inner seal that goes in there, this is the original one. I'm going to reuse that because it's actually in really good condition. There's no point putting a new one in. I'll have that one as a backup. But I found a problem with the outer seal, so the bit that fits on this lip, and then it's the dust guard to stop anything getting in there. This is the original one. So again, fantastic condition, no problem with that one. Now the new one that they give you is too big. So it's got this outer hard rim on there, and that does not fit on the AT caliper. It's too big. So I'm going to get in touch with them about that one and see if I can get a replacement or something. So because that one's in good condition, I'm going to reuse that one. So I'm reusing both of the original rubbers from the kit. Instead of the kit. So I'm not using those, but I'll keep those as backup. And then I'll use the outer bits because those were knackered on mine. So these are the only things I'm using from the new kit. I'm going to put a bit of this paste on just to help it, because when I'm sliding that caliper back in, it's going to help slip through because it can get a bit stuck. Now I've cleaned the inner bore, and I've cleaned all of this with some brake cleaner. So I've just used some of this triple QX stuff. So I've given it all a good clean. I'm just going to do another clean before I actually fit it, just to make sure it's all clean inside there and there's no bits or anything that shouldn't be. See it all the way around there. So it's making sure it's not twisted in any way. It's not caught up on anything. It needs to be flat all the way around. There's loads of videos online about how difficult it is to get the actual dust sleeve on these things. So I'm using a technique that I've seen, which is putting it slightly on here first, and then you push the whole piston in, and then it pops into that groove there. So I'm going to put it right on the end. The idea is having it like that allows you to pop it into that groove there. You can see on the inner part. And then we can push the piston all the way in. 270 newton meters for later bands and 160 newton meters for early bands. I've got a bit of a problem. I can't fit, because it's brand new disc, brand new brake pads, there's not enough clearance to actually fit this in. I'm going to use this tool to push it all the way in, and that'll give me enough clearance to fit over the pads and the new brake disc. What I've used on this is a bit of an extension bar, because these are so deep, these ones. I'm just using some ceramic brake grease to go on the areas where it's in contact with the caliper. Just putting some silicone grease on the pins as well, so the caliper can slide easily. There's the caps to go on the end. Still turns. The last part is reconnecting the fuel line. So I had this brass bung in there while it's been off, so I can take that off now. You can see the brake fluid in there. Like this. I'll tighten it from this side. So this is 11mm on this side. So I'm using the Easy Bleed kit to bleed the brakes. So that's this one. I'll just set that about 5-10 psi, something like that. And then I can bleed the brakes down here, so I've just attached it with this thing. It goes into the pot. So I'm just waiting until there's no more little bubbles coming through. See the pot filling up. There we have it. I can fit the wheels back on now. Job done. Whoa, that was a learning experience, all of that. I would not have had the confidence to do anything with my brakes and the wheel bearings if it were not for the great online community we have for our vans. And if you're interested in learning more about these vans, then I do recommend checking out the forums. So there's the Club 8090 forum, and it's named because the vans were built in the 80s and 90s and not because it's a holiday club for OAPs. But there's loads of people on there, loads of knowledge. I've learned loads from all the different threads and the archive of things that they have on there and the wiki that they have. There's also the Samba. If you check out the Vanagon section on there, again, it's based in the US, that one, so loads of people with their knowledge sharing all that. And if you're on Facebook, I recommend signing up and joining the T3 Knowledge Exchange group. Loads of people on there, they'll give you answers. Most people have done the things that you're probably looking to do, and they'll give you advice on the best ways of doing things that they're about. And as I say, I wouldn't have had the confidence to do any of this if it wasn't for that community that have shared knowledge of how they've done stuff, and I'm just replicating that. But I'm just going to reiterate what I said at the beginning, is that I'm not a professional mechanic. This is just my experience doing this. So please don't use it as a technical how-to. You know, it's just my experience of doing these things with brakes, because if it goes wrong, I don't want to be responsible for things going wrong. So let me know in the comments if there's something that you want other people to know. I'm not going to be doing this job again for a long time, so that's me done for a while. But if you've got things to share with people, please add it to the comments. I always read them, really interested to see what your thoughts are. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed learning about the wheel bearings and how all that works. That was really interesting. Really enjoyed that. And then how simple calipers are. They've just got the piston and a sealing ring, and that's it essentially. So simple. And I'm glad I did it. Looking at all that gunk that was behind it. That stuff has built up over years and years and years. So it's good that I've cleared that out. And yeah, it's always fun when you've done a job like that and you do that first drive. But my brakes work and my wheels haven't fell off, so I must have done it correctly. I followed all the torque settings that I should have done, and done it step by step, so it seems to be okay. And yeah, I think using the Mercedes locking wheel nut as well, I thought that was a great tip, and I learnt that one from Johnny, who's an enthusiastic Norwegian. So check out his channel, which is Italjon. And yeah, using that Mercedes-Benz part on our vans, it's nice. It's like a nice upgrade for us, and it's a really good tip. So I recommend picking one of them up if you can. Just means that you can adjust the wheel bearings, so I can after a few hundred miles I'll be able to see what the tension is on those wheel bearings and then adjust it without having to put a new nut on, which is great. And yeah, what else did I do? I bled all the brake system as well at the same time as bleeding the front brakes, so I've got clean fluid throughout the whole van. So I didn't show that in the video, but that's what I did as well. So yeah, that's it. Please like and subscribe. It means more people can see these videos, and let me know your thoughts below.